Tonight, water woes in Newark. The drinking water system there contaminated with lead. We'll check out the impact, speak with the residents, and discuss why this is happening so often, especially in the poorer communities across this country. Then we focus in on the Dems. Tomorrow, qualifying deadline for the next debate as new numbers help clarify the top of the Democratic pack from the rest. Plus, Trump troubles at home and abroad. We're going to fact check the latest word salad from the president, which happened as the world watched the G7 summit. We'll also discuss his plummeting numbers at home as Republican after Republican is walking away from Congress. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you for joining us this Tuesday night. Now, we begin this evening in Newark, New Jersey. It's the largest city in the Garden State, which has now become a member of a club that no city wants to join. This isn't about crime or hate or poverty. It's about drinking water.
We are going to replace approximately 18,000 lead service lines in homes across the city of Newark. And it is critical that we create a permanent solution to modernize Newark's infrastructure and eliminate lead service lines to reduce the risk of lead in the water for all Newark families.
Newark, it has a water problem, specifically lead in the drinking water, and turns out it's hardly alone. Newark now stands alongside Flint, Michigan, East Chicago, Indiana, St. Joseph, Louisiana, Hoosick Falls, New York, and others, all dealing with contaminated water supplies and none getting the help they need to either prevent the problems or fix them once they're discovered. Now, the problems in Newark leading to protests outside the Prudential Center during last night's Video Music Awards. Now, all as residents, they scramble for solutions and wonder why it happened to them. Our own Dominic, he spent the day in Newark yesterday. He shares what people are saying there.
In better days, 5-year-old Bryce Thomas was allowed to play with the water in Newark, but that was before he tested positive for lead. Earlier this year, lead measured a staggering 76.2 parts per billion in his mother's home. And for Shakima Thomas, it's a call to action. Yesterday, the Music Awards for MTV was in Newark, and the group she is part of, the Newark Water Coalition, took to the streets. The signs told the story.
We're protesting on this day because we feel as though, why should the mayor party while our kids are dying? This is one great big party, and we're not invited to the party, but we're left suffering and fighting for clean water.
For Newark residents, the stakes are enormous.
We know for certain that over 15 parts per million, you start to see irreversible brain damage and behavioral issues, very aggressive behavioral issues in developing children.
Heather Kohler and her mother, Brenda, live in Newark, and they have their own water filter business. They are not surprised at what's going on.
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised because I've been looking at it since 2011, 2012. I've been looking at it. And I knew that the water was highly contaminated. And it's more than lead.
Newark is weeks into an escalating public health crisis caused by elevated levels of lead in the water.
It's really bad. What concerns me the most is because we have little people in our homes, and they are the most affected by the condition of the water in Newark.
And then there were the blunders by city officials, giving out water filters that didn't fix the problem, providing bottled water, some of which was expired. But in a crisis, many see bottled water as their only quick fix and a way of life.
I put water in my cup to brush my teeth. I put it in, and I open up like 10 bottles of water to if I want to cook some rice or something. I don't use tap water. Anytime I use tap water is when I'm taking a shower.
You're telling me you buy water to even brush your teeth?
To brush my teeth, because I have an 8-year-old son, so I can't afford to expose him to whatever is going on.
It appears relief is on the way, with Newark racing to replace lead pipes. The announcement just this week came from Governor Murphy and Mayor Ras Baraka with a $120 million bond. But the city is defensive. Look at this sign dead center in front of City Hall. It reads, quote, "America's old infrastructure is an American problem, not just a Newark problem." The process to replace the pipes has been fast-tracked, and city residents are no longer on the hook to pay $1,000 to replace the pipes leading to their home.
It's a great development and good news for the residents of the city. A project that we thought would take 10 years to do, it seems like it's shrinking by the moment, and now there are thoughts that it could take as little as 5 to 4 to 3 years to complete. So we're very excited. Anything that's going to alleviate this problem and not be a burden to the homeowners is good news.
And the best part is that the people don't have to pay. So I couldn't get any better than that.
Sarah Slaughter lives in the Society Hill section of Newark and was out with her great-granddaughter.
It's going to be fixed. It's going to take a time, but it's going to be fixed.
But some residents remain livid at the political process. The last mayor of Newark and presidential candidate Cory Booker left for the U.S. Senate years before lead levels spiked. But his oversight of the water supply has come under scrutiny. A 2014 state comptroller's report found rampant abuse of public funds and no real oversight of the semi-public agency in charge of treating and delivering water to Newark. Indictments quickly followed. A Booker ally who led the agency and he appointed her is currently serving an 8-year prison sentence for soliciting bribes.
This public health crisis was man-made. It could have been avoided, but it wasn't because we have mismanagement and inadequate personnel that's not even certified to deal with water.
With Newark has come the constant echoes of Flint, Michigan.
The best thing that happened since Flint, which is an oxymoron, right? It's like, how could anything good happen since Flint? But the best thing that's happened since Flint is that the curtains are being peeled back and people are starting to ask what's really going on with our water. Because the things that threaten our health, you cannot see, taste, or smell.
This mother-daughter team lives in Newark, and their company is Tap Water Doctor. They started selling water filters years before the crisis. Brenda Toyloy says she's proud to be a community activist. They are praising Mayor Baraka and Governor Murphy for coming up with a quick solution.
I was so happy and so relieved that this was going to happen and that all the lead service lines, it is the responsible thing to do. There's no way we would be irresponsible and leave lead lines in the ground because people don't want to pay $1,000, which these lines were put in 1886. That's when the installments began. And on this block, on Renner Avenue, the majority of the homes were installed in 1912.
But get ready, the problems of an aging infrastructure system. Newark, New Jersey, Newburgh, New York, is in all likelihood coming to an area near you.
Even if there were no infrastructure issues, even if there were no contamination issues, there's still the issue of all of the chemicals that are put in the water to make it deliverable, right? Because it's a phenomenon to go to any sink, to go to any toilet and flush it, and water's there on demand. That's a modern day phenomenon that we take for granted.
And as far as the bottled water.
So, we started with Flint, Michigan, almost 4 years ago. The problem is bigger than bottled water. That's a Band-Aid solution. We're focused on long-term solutions for the residents.
Bottled water is a problem because the plastic leaches. There's no guarantee on the quality of water.
Dom, you covered, for folks who don't remember, the situation in Newburgh. We see now the situation in Newark. We all remember what happened in Flint. It seemed that there were warning signs before these things happened. And either it was, and I'll speak to somebody who deals with it on a national level, but did you get a sense, I sense relief there from a lot of the folks that something was happening, that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. But there must be frustration too, which is we shouldn't be in this situation in the first place.
Absolutely, Richard. Officials that all the residents that we talked to yesterday, they give, especially the mother-daughter team, they give the governor credit and the mayor for coming up with the solution, but everybody's second point, if you will, was why did it get to this point? Why wasn't this diagnosed immediately in 2017, instead of city officials saying that the water was safe? I will point out, Richard, that we have sat down with Mayor Baraka before, but this time he was not willing to sit down on camera and do an interview with us.
I don't think people appreciate just how dangerous lead in water is, especially for kids. I mean, you saw some concerned mothers there, but every doctor you talk to, right, they say, be real concerned about developmental consequences if there is high level lead levels.
Absolutely, Richard. And kids it's dangerous for children, it's dangerous for pregnant women, and you oftentimes don't see the warning signs until it's already too late. And so the young lady from the Newark Water Coalition, she's concerned because her son is right below the threshold of the danger sign. So there are lots of serious consequences that can come out of this.
Real quickly, I know don't count on Washington for help for this. Where's help come from? Is it a bond?
A bond.
Is this Trenton, or is this really more through the bond that they're going to raise the money?
They're going to raise the money through the bond, but taxpayers of Newark are afraid that they may ultimately end up with the bill on the backside. However, city officials, state officials are saying that's not so, and a big deal is the $1,000, Richard, that they no longer have to pay per house to get these pipes replaced.
Dominic, thank you very much. And for more on the contamination issues at water systems across the nation, I want to bring in now Dimple Chaudhary. Dimple was the lead counsel for the National Resource Defense Council in the efforts to aid the people of Flint, Michigan. To my way of thinking, should we look at this as a coincidence that we got yet another urban area where we're having this problem, and it's certainly not just Newark and it's not just Flint? Is there a pattern here, or is it just my imagination?
No, there's absolutely a pattern here. We have, in cities across the country, old infrastructure, aging infrastructure that hasn't been tended to. And a lot of that has lead in it. As we know, lead is extremely toxic, it's extremely dangerous. And over time, those lead pipes are posing an increasing risk to people's health. And as this old infrastructure really starts to deteriorate even more rapidly, we're seeing these problems begin across the country.
I guess there's two rationales one could have, which is, you have aging infrastructure, probably not a lot of checks and balances in underserved communities to check it out. Or, as you saw in Michigan, and you know far better than I did, there was a coherent, intentional actions on the part of superiors to basically say, well, let's do whatever we can to marginalize the population. Until somebody calls us out for it, we can save a buck in the process. How much of this is just accidental or intentional?
Well, I think it depends on the circumstances. Certainly in Flint, you saw deliberate, conscious decisions that were intended to put a community at risk. And we saw that in the way the state took over the city of Flint and made decisions to change its water source without using the proper treatment technique in order to contain the lead release into the water. And so certainly that was very deliberate. We don't know what's going on, for example, in Newark. We don't know what kind of decisions were made that led to that crisis. But certainly it can be, I think, either a set of deliberate decisions or in some cases negligence or just an inattentiveness. But I think what is a common problem with all of these cities is a disregard for communities, particularly communities of color and low-income communities, who may not have the political power to fight for themselves and for others in the way that richer communities often do.
So to that end, instead of waiting for the next contamination where people got to, scramble to get bottled water, what should be happening now, not just in Jersey or in Michigan, but in places where we can, I think, rationally predict they're going to have the same problems we've just talked about here? How can we get ahead of it rather than be reactive?
Well, I think there's two big things that need to happen. One is that water systems across the country need to take their head out of the sand, and they need to realize that if they have lead-containing infrastructure, they are going to have a lead problem. We need to be serious about investing in the infrastructure. We need to be serious about getting money to low-income communities in particular, who are really at the heart of this crisis. A poor community like Newark, a poor community like Flint, they're not only facing lead exposure from their drinking water, but also from lead paint and lead soil. And so those communities really need the focus of our attention, the focus of our dollars. So there needs to be programs that are directed towards them. And lastly, I'd say we need to reform the laws that are allowing these crises to perpetuate. The Safe Drinking Water Act is the federal law that's supposed to protect our drinking water. That's the law NRDC sued Flint under. That's the law that we've sued Newark under. And that law is in sore need of updating to address what we know now about lead contamination and contamination from many other types of chemicals in our drinking water.
Dimple, thank you so much. I appreciate a few minutes.
Thank you.
All right, on the other side of the break, we're going to talk 2020, specifically Democrats here. A lot of people thought when Joe Biden got in the race, it was an inevitability that he would become the Democratic nominee. Well, new polls out say, slow your roll here. There are some real questions, and the gap between practicality and passion. We're going to talk about that and more after this.